Hey everyone, welcome back to Titans Talk, the series dedicated to DC Universe's Titans. We finally made it. We made it to the season finale of season number 1 of Titans, and it was a bit of a doozy, but I absolutely loved it. There was a ton of great, crazy, insane things that happened in this episode, but there were a few flaws, but overall, I have to say this was definitely a very good finale. Now, the finale explores exactly as I predicted. It essentially picks up with Dick in sort of like this fantasy, dreamlike sort of sequence that is controlled essentially by Trigon, where he's sort of living his sort of fantasy life is the best way I can put it, where he's having sort of his perfect life off with Dawn. They have a kid and another one on the way. Beast Boy and Raven are off at college. Starfire is in the FBI. Everyone is essentially happy. But Jason Todd shows up at Dick's house, paralyzed, after informing him that Gotham is worse than ever, and so is Batman. And the only person that can bring Batman back from the edge of all this darkness and things that's going on, and the only person he'll listen to is Dick. So Dick decides to go off back to Gotham and try and bring Batman back from the edge. But unfortunately, he can't do it. He ends up actually breaking his code and killing not only the Joker, but also Two-Face, the Riddler, Ventriloquist, and a whole bunch of other people. As I said, this episode was absolutely fantastic. I loved every single second of it. I was on the edge of my seat for every single step of the way. This entire storyline felt so focused and well written, having such crazy things like Batman breaking his code, the only person who can stop him is Dick. There's a bunch of great things that I really, really liked about this episode. It was kind of detracted from what Titans has been building up for the past 10 episodes, which is kind of where the disappointment starts, because this episode felt very detached from that, because it's sort of a fantasy that Trigon is controlling. And the way that it ends is you sort of find out this whole fantasy sequence is essentially Dick being controlled by Trigon and having sort of like these black eyes, very much like Raven has had for the most of the season whenever she uses her abilities. And I felt like just that end scene, once that sort of whole reveal happens, and him sort of being like, they'll all see how the darkness and things like that. I felt like that was extremely cheesy. It disconnected everything from every fantastic piece of writing and visuals that we saw for the past 40 minutes. Completely got taken away in the last 3 minutes. It felt so detached, and it was just like the worst sinking feeling when that's how they decided to end the season instead of a little bit more epicness, at least on a cliffhanger side. But there is a great cliffhanger sort of situation at the very end of the credits. I'll get to that in just a minute. But the way that the series ended, having such a phenomenal episode for 40 minutes and then completely killing it in the last 3 was heartbreaking, because I was so hooked into the story. I felt like this story could actually be its own sort of standalone movie, whatever. I actually really liked it. It had a lot of great character moments. It had a lot of great storyline. It had great action. A bunch of really good stuff there, and it just sort of felt wasted with those last 3 minutes. I had a feeling it was a dreamlike sequence, so I wasn't disappointed that it did end up being that. But it just never felt like the way that it ended, with sort of Trigon being like, controlling him, Raven trying to wake him up, Dick sort of having the black eyes saying how they'll all see. It just felt kind of just blah. And after such a great 40 minutes, it just felt very disheartening, because it didn't really leave us on a cliffhanger for what Trigon's really doing. I mean, I guess it kind of gives the idea that Trigon can control people in that manner and sort of spread his darkness that way. But other than that, it sort of just didn't have the connection and sort of make me want to wait and anticipate for that next season until we get to the very end credits, after credit scene. That makes you want to see the next season. But the way that that part didn't exist, I would probably just not be so much excited for season number 2 whenever they decide to release that. And then to piggyback off of that thought, my question is, what was the whole purpose of the episode and how it's going to lead into Trigon sort of taking over the world or trying to spread his darkness? My only possible theory for why they decided to shoot this episode the way that they did, having this sort of dreamlike sequence and then ending it with Dick having like dark eyes and things like that, sort of like a metaphor for how Trigon spreads his darkness. The only possible reason why I could see why we saw that is so that we can sort of get an idea of what people are seeing when Trigon is taking over them or they have the black eyes. And it really wasn't necessary for the most part, and it leads me to ask, what was the whole purpose? My only guess is that because Trigon essentially inserted himself inside of the fantasy at one point as like a GCPD police captain or something like that, and he eventually learns the identity that Batman is Bruce Wayne. So maybe by spreading his darkness, he can sort of use that to his benefit, I guess, to be able to spread his darkness, get to Batman, be able to have his abilities controlled, things like that. That's my only real reason. I guess knowledge is power for him by spreading the darkness. I don't really understand what the whole point is, but it just felt like didn't make any sense why we just saw 40 minutes of great stuff in Dick's head, and then the last 3 minutes we just sort of saw, oh, he just has black eyes and is under Trigon's control. It just didn't really make a whole lot of sense and leave you like lingering and wanting to see more. But again, the end credits after the credits and that end scene was absolutely phenomenal and wanting to get you hooked to see more. Now the end credit scene is at a Cadmus facility, which is a facility controlled, or a company controlled rather, by Lex Luthor. And it's sort of a breakout looking situation. A bunch of people are on the floor. It says Subject 13 has escaped. And there's like a big muscular dude. We see like he's got a Superman tattoo, and there's a white dog in a cage. A bunch of great stuff, essentially alluding to the fact that it's not Superman necessarily, but it's actually Superboy. And the dog is Crypto. Now, why they decided to go with adding Crypto, that was a little bit of a weird thing. I didn't quite understand that. Superboy was enough, to be quite honest with you. I love Superboy. And I think that he's got a very interesting story, being a Superman clone. I would really like to see, and that has me really excited to see how he's going to interact with the Titans. Are they going to fight? Is it just going to be sort of like trying to understand who he is type of situation? There's a lot of great storylines that could happen with Superboy in the narrative of Titans, so that's really exciting to see what could be coming there next season. But the addition of Crypto I felt was kind of strange, especially since it feels like this is just sort of an Earth dog that they sort of modified to have those Superman abilities. It was not necessarily a dog from Krypton that has these abilities same as Superman, very much like Crypto has in the comics. So I feel like this one isn't officially Crypto per se, but it's a Crypto-like dog. But that is definitely Superboy, as it is Subject 13 at a Cadmus facility. That's exactly what Superboy was in the comics, so at least we have that pretty much confirmed. There's just so much to unpack in this episode, from what's happening in Dick's head with everyone being so much better off than they are in the real world. They're sort of scattered still in the real world, so there's a lot of things that are happening and things that will have to play out in order for them to come together and sort of probably help stop Trigon. And then that leads to the question is, how does Superboy play into the whole narrative? Is he there to essentially help stop Trigon, or is he going to be like the reason why that's going to bring them together to help stop Superboy, to convince him he's good? There's a lot of big questions there, because I don't think it'd be good for him to be the one that stops Trigon, even though he is powerful, considering that, number one, Trigon used magic, which is a big weakness for Superboy, Superman, all that stuff there. And that kind of takes away from the story of Raven, where she's supposed to be the one that brings him sort of into the real world, and therefore she should be the one that stops him. I mean, it's her father. There's a big storyline that could happen there. So hopefully she's the one that's going to have to take over, and really control her abilities to stop Trigon, instead of the Titans working together and Superboy sort of coming in to be able to stop him. I feel like Raven needs to be that person to take him down if the series wants to have a good continuity and a good storyline. Raven hands down makes the most sense to stop Trigon. So how Superboy plays into that, I'm not quite sure yet. But overall, for the episode, I absolutely loved it. It had great action. There were some things that threw me off, other than that ending scene, sort of like this warp thing that whenever Dick had to make a decision. I thought that was a little bit strange. But other than those two little nitpicks, the overall grade that I have to give this episode is hands down an A+. That story, everything that played out in Dick's mind with Batman, with him killing the Joker and all these other characters, I felt like Batman shouldn't have been a part of the series, because he definitely is going to detract from what's happening with the Titans. But because it takes place in Dick's mind, I feel like it sort of works, because we didn't really get a full look at Batman. He wasn't a part of the story. He wasn't telling them what to do. He wasn't taking over the situation. He was just a character that Dick had to interact with in order for him to cope, or because he's essentially the coping mechanism for a lot of what's happened in his life. He's sort of the catalyst for that. So because it played out in Dick's mind, I think it actually worked really good and played perfectly. And I have no complaints there in terms of involving him. And the episode overall, again, I love the story. I felt like it would have been perfect for a movie or anything really. I mean, it was such a great standalone story. I would have loved to see it in any medium, whether it be cartoon, live action like on Titans, even on the big screen. I feel like there was a lot of opportunities there, and I really liked that story. Just that little bit of an ending and just that little nitpick thing that really just drove me a little bit nuts. But considering that is the season finale, I guess I should give my grade for the overall season. The season has a lot of ups and downs. I feel like it had a lot of ups, but also a lot of downs. It was very rocky in the beginning. It went through a little bit of a good spurt with about 3 episodes back to back that I really liked. Pretty good, decent, I would say, for debut season. It felt a little bit scattered, but if they can bring it all together and tie all these storylines together, I think that would be best. Also, if they would be willing to release all the episodes at one time, so us binge watchers would be able to actually enjoy and get through some of those weak points and not have to wait a week and feel disappointed and hope the next episode is better. I feel like that would have been a better play, but considering this is DC's sort of first show on their debut platform, I feel like it was pretty good overall. And for that reason, the overall grade that I have to give for the entire season is a B-. Again, there were a lot of ups and downs throughout the season. I did give some pretty high grades to some episodes, but I would have to say in terms of storyline, for the 40 minutes of this episode that was so fantastic and the last 3 that really let me down, this is probably my favorite episode of the season entirely. I mean, I would watch this episode again. I probably will watch this episode again, even if I just watch it standalone, because it takes place in his head. I mean, it pretty much is standalone. It has not a whole lot to do with the actual story, and so I feel like this one is hands down the best of them all. There are some pretty good ones, but because it does have sort of some rocky areas, it tried to set up other series that DC is going to be having. There's some rough patches, but it definitely has the potential to be a great series. It's a good series now, but it has the potential to be a great series. But I really look forward to seeing season 2 whenever that comes out, probably sometime next year. Hopefully not wait until 2020, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I've really enjoyed doing this Titan Talk series. I've had a lot of fun talking about every episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you guys like this series or you want to see me do more series like this, let me know in the comment section down below, as well as your thoughts on the season finale of Titans, as well as the season overall. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. If you like this series, also let me know if you want to see me do any other series. If there's another show you want me to see me do or anything like that, this has been a lot of fun, so I really enjoy that. Just let me know down below. I'd really like to know. I'm sure there's a ton of different series that I would like to watch or things that could be interesting. But yeah, just let me know. I've had a lot of fun in this series. It's been a great year pretty much overall for videos for me. I did have a little bit of a break point at some point, but I kind of got back on that horse after a while. But I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing a lot more series like this and other reviews. So make sure you're subscribed for all of that stuff. But other than that, that's all I have for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great holiday season, and I hope to see you in the next one.